Jeff, you muted everyone, including Rabbi Myra.
No, Myra can unmute herself.
Yes, okay. Now let's try that again.
Our speakers can unmute themselves. It's their co-host.
All right.
And I just hit the record button, so we will have a recording.
Right. So I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for being here. The beauty of Zoom is that we can have people from all over the universe when we get together. And I don't know quite if all over the universe might be a bit exaggerated, but we have folks from our local Reno community and from lots of other places as well. And we're glad to have everyone. Some of you have been with us for all the sessions and some are joining us today, and that's great. We're glad about all of that. A little bit of tech details. Jeffrey has, Dr. Gingold has muted everyone. We will we'll have our presentations and then we'll have a Q&A discussion, whatever. It seems like the format we tried last week, which was kind of a hybrid. You could put questions in the chat or you can raise your hand. You can either do it like by waving in one of the little boxes and we may or may not see you, but also, at least if you're on a computer, there's that little toolbar at the bottom that has reactions and you can raise your hand like mine just did, and then you can go back in and lower your hand. So any of those methods, we'll try to make it all work for when we get to discussion. I want to thank Jeff Gingold, who's been the hardworking partner through these sessions. And I also want to thank our administrative assistant, Mike Stombaugh, who always does all our tech stuff and sets things up and is just a godsend. I also want to note that it is Jeffrey Gingold's birthday today. So everybody give him a happy birthday hand. So that's the happy news. The sadder news, I think that before we start a class like this or a session like this, I feel that we really need to take a moment today just in silence to remember the folks who lost their lives in Atlanta in this recent week, 6 of whom were Asian women. One more manifestation of hate to add to the list that's out there. I don't have a list of their names, and I'm afraid I would butcher some of the pronunciations if I did. Hopefully you have seen all their names. And so if we can just take just a moment or two in their memory. Thank you. And we pray, and I hope we commit that the memory is more than just a memory. It's a imperative to us to be out there working to end all of those horrible isms and violence and hate and everything else that's out there. I think I failed to say in the techie stuff, I said that you're muted. Stay muted unless until we get to the question and answer stuff and it's your time to talk, then happily unmute. All right, so I want to move on to presenting our presenters. First of all, thanking them for doing this today. And I'm really excited to hear from both of them. You've seen their bios, I hope, when you registered, you got that information. And they both are very impressive humans, and I could do long bios on them, but then you'd have to hear from me as opposed to hearing from them. So that's silly. So I'm just going to quickly go through their bios. Our presenters today are Talia Guzman and Gerald Miller. Talia, if you are around Temple Sinai, and particularly if you are part of the Temple Sinai Religious School, you know Talia because she has 5 years of religious school teaching, which included a whole lot of work on curriculum design and development. And in fact, this past year, when Sinai School has been on Zoom, basically Talia and Rabbi Sarah have been running the whole show. And as much as we all wish you well, I know that Rabbi Sarah would like to probably, nail your feet to the Temple Sinai Religious School extension and not let you go. Talia is a high school senior at the Academy of Arts, Careers, and Technology in Reno. I mentioned all that she's done at Sinai. In addition, she's out there in the community doing all kinds of impressive things. She is a 2-time FCCLA medalist, and I had to look that up. That's the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America that she has excelled in with twice recognition. And she is a Brandeis pre-college alumni ambassador. I went online to look and see what that meant, and it means pretty much what it says. That she's might be going to Brandeis, and she's doing some ambassador work for them even before she gets there. But if you go on the website to check it out, there she is. They have highlighted our Talia as one of their impressive people that is in that program. So Talia, okay, I'd say more because, like I knew her from before she was a baby, but I won't. Our second presenter is Gerald Miller. And if you've been around the Reno community for any length of time, you surely know Geralda, particularly from her years as the diversity reporter for the Reno Gazette-Journal, where she reported on issues of Reno's diverse populations, the history and culture of communities of color. And that was just a part of her 15-year career as a journalist. In the I think it was sort of towards the end of that time, Geralda, that she also became really involved in reporting on the arts and culture, particularly in Reno, which is the logical move to where she is now, where she's currently the executive director of Art Spot Reno, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes arts and artists in Reno and gives information and education about all the arts and culture in the Reno community. She earned a BA in journalism at Southern Methodist University with a minor in African American Studies, and she has a master's degree in history at the University of Nevada, Reno, with a focus on race and ethnicity. And we are campmates at Burning Man, so I know Geralda under a lot of playa dust, but I will not go into those stories either. So I'm going to turn the screen over to Talia and Geralda, and you will take it away as you have prepared to do. And thank you both so much.
All right, good morning or good afternoon at this point, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi, for introducing me. I'm very glad to be here with all of you today. So I'm going to get this all queued up, back to my Sunday school roots, ready to go. All right, so I will be speaking for about 15 minutes. I'm first going to discuss my heritage and familial background, because that is what made me a person of color. Then I will tell you a little bit about me before going into my experiences with aggressions at Temple Sinai. At the end of my time, I'd like to share some of my thoughts and reactions to some of the comments and content of the previous sessions. So my mother's family are Ashkenazi Jews from present-day Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, Romania, the classics. So both sides of her family immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. My grandfather's family actually settled on the island of Key West off the coast of Florida, and my grandmother's family settled in Richmond, Virginia, which is where my mother was born. And this is her, my mother, bottom row center. So my father's family, on the other hand, are mestizos from Romita, Guanajuato. It's an agricultural district about 350 kilometers northeast of Mexico City. So think Midwest here, it's Midwest there. My dad immigrated to the United States in the early 90s, and my parents actually met here in Reno in the mid 90s. They got married at Temple Sinai in 1997 with Rabbi Myra officiating, and she actually conducted some of the service in Spanish. So big kudos to her. Because my mom is white passing and my dad is indigenous, my family looks like this, which brings me to talk about myself. So I was born here in Reno in 2002. I've been a lifelong member of Temple Sinai. I started with Torah for Tots and am now in Hebrew High. I had my bat mitzvah at Temple Sinai in 2015 with Rabbi Bear. And then right away, I began teaching Sinai school, like Rabbi Myra said. So I've been doing that for about 5 years now. If you're not involved with Sinai school, you may have seen me when I spoke at the Nevada Interfaith Prayer Breakfast in 2019, or with the Library and Social Action Committees kind of on and off over the last couple of years. So before I go into my experiences at Sinai, I want to say that I believe places of worship are supposed to be a refuge. You know, outside of temple, I hear things like, you're more white than Mexican. Thick Jew, Shalom, Hanu whatever is not a real holiday, and we're on opposite teams. So I really expect to be able to go to Temple Sinai. And, maybe these are some things that you yourself have heard or experienced, right? These are anti-Semitic aggressions. So when I go to Temple Sinai, I expect to be able to be part of the community. I don't want to face, and I don't appreciate facing anti-Latino sentiment. Instead of that, people ask me if I am new to the community. My dad gets snubbed at men's clubs meetings. It is common that my family is ignored or mistreated when volunteering. It's assumed that we haven't paid our fees. And I am told that I look too Mexican, which is, of course, in direct contradiction with the earlier statement made. The three experiences that I have made slides to talk about today are ones that I think about pretty regularly. The second one I think about pretty much on a daily basis, and we'll talk about that when we get there. I'd like to point out that I'm going to go in chronological order, not order of burden. So the first event that I'm going to share with you is my bat mitzvah. As I mentioned before, I was bat mitzvahed with Rabbi Bear at Temple Sinai in 2015. As a Mexican American, I wanted to include that half of my heritage in this very special coming of age ceremony. So, we decorated with papel picado, which you can see here hanging from the lights. Kind of like Jewish paper cut. There's a Mexican version of that. I wore a blue quinceañera dress. You can kind of see me at the back of this picture here. It was a humongous dress. There's no way to miss it if you were there. And I had Central Mexican food and music, which brings me to this, a diary entry that I wrote on November 9th of 2015 about my bat mitzvah. It says, my temple friends and my school friends did not get along. It didn't help that my temple friends went into the hall because the band was too loud either. $5 if you can guess what race my school friends were compared to my temple friends. But as you can see, at the age of 13, I had two completely separate friend groups that made up equally important parts of my life. But here, at the most important event of my adolescence, I felt abandoned by my peers, who had gone through years of Hebrew school experience with me because of music, which is a cultural thing. And I actually saw a girl from my B'nai Mitzvah class put in earplugs when the Hispanic band started playing, which made me feel super, super ashamed. And I want to say, how messed up is that? I'm supposed to be celebrating the beginning of the next stage of my life, and I'm thinking about how my religious school classmates don't like my culture, which is inextricable from me. Apart from the behavior of the youth present, I'd like to address the really freaky vibe that came off of the adults at the Kiddush luncheon. It's absolutely critical to remember that you as parents or grandparents, or possibly even great-grandparents, your behavior is the model for your family. So when you skirt around Hispanic guests or family members at Temple Sinai, or you refuse to eat the ethnic food being served at someone's bat mitzvah because it is spick food, that is offensive. It's hurtful. You as an adult are harming the 13-year-olds in the room, myself included. Culture blending is beautiful. Children should not be forced to have to change the way that they experience life when they move from space to space. It is unacceptable that adults at Temple Sinai, who have a lot more than 13 years of life experience, direct their children to avoid different cultures, especially when the avoidance comes in the form of them maneuvering around a peer. So as Nicole Jacobs discussed in last week's session, hair is a central part of a person's identity, which is why this incident kind of really just cut me. It comes to mind pretty much every time I do my hair, which is pretty often. It took place my freshman year of high school, so 2017. It was at a lock-in youth group event that took place after Shabbat services, so at Temple Sinai. The four of us girls were in the restroom getting ready for bed. I was brushing out my hair, and one of them said to me, You look weird with straight hair. You look too Mexican. I felt this wave of cold just kind of rush over me, and the hair on the back of my neck kind of stood up. I was shocked. This was a girl that I had sat beside for years. We were in the same grade. Our brothers were the same age. We'd been friends for years. I'd spent the night at her grandparents' house. I thought I knew her, and I had no idea what to do. How do you react in a situation like that? You are locked in, literally. So I ended up just kind of laughing it off. And this incident absolutely ruined whatever friendship we had. Every time I saw her after that, all I could think about was her racism. She had been racist to me. And I knew it was time then to remove myself from the relationship because she started fetishizing Latino men while bashing Latina features as undesirable. What I would ask of you in this situation is, in which of these pictures do I look more Mexican? It is obviously not possible to look Jewish. So I've got the same face, I've got the same makeup, I've got the same shirt. With which hairdo would you assume that I was new to Temple Sinai or that I wasn't Jewish? Would you have made that assumption based on these pictures if my skin was lighter or if my hair was blonde? This kind of eases us into my last big example. So during my tenure as the youth group president at Temple Sinai, I signed us up to host an oneg. So I brought my brother along, and we were joined by one other young man. At the beginning of services, though, it was just the two of us, my brother and I. So obviously, as you saw in the family photo that I shared a couple of slides ago, he is considerably darker than I am. So we sat at the front of the sanctuary with our siddurim. I had my talis bag on the seat next to us, and we are sitting there and we're just kind of talking, chit-chatting before the service starts. And we are approached by a woman who asks us, "Have you been here before?" I was very confused. Obviously I had been, since I have literally been attending Temple Sinai for quite some time, to have had a full Hebrew school education, to have had my bat mitzvah there, to be the president of the youth group who was hosting the oneg that night. So I just kind of went, "Yes, I am the president of the youth group." And she just kind of scuttled away. So obviously she knew she was being assumptive. No apology, none of the assist model steps that we learned from Nicole Jacobs last week. And now that I have shared my 3 examples, I would like to talk about the last 2 sessions of this program, both of which are available for viewing on the Temple Sinai YouTube page if you are just joining us for the first time. So the first thing that I would like to say is that Ashkenazi Jews do not look the way we used to, or the way people stereotypically think of us, right? There are Black and brown people who are born Ashkenazi. Me, I am an Ashkenazi Jew. I am not Sephardic. My mother's family is from East Europe. We are Ashkenazi Jews. A comment was made at the first session that knowing that there are more Jews of color than I thought is enriching and makes me feel happy/good. Why does that make you happy? Why does that make you feel good? We're just Jews, just like you. I would challenge you to take that mindset, and just keep it with you from now on. Being white passing does not award you any form of superiority over Jews who are not white passing. You have to remember, as we learned in the first session, that Jews and Judaism are historically pluralistic, right? Jews of color aren't special, we aren't fragile, and not all of us are converts. We are just Jews. In reflecting after the second session, which is last week's session, I would tell white passing Jews to think about what you are going to say before you open your mouth. Those of you present last week were taught about microaggressions and given the tools to fix the issues that they've created, that you guys have created, quite frankly. You have to remember that Sinai is doing a pretty good job because the clearly POC population is not obvious. We are not in majority. And so non-impacted members, you guys aren't seeing the discrimination that occurs on a regular basis. You know, a question was asked a couple weeks ago regarding the best way to reach out to people of color that we don't yet know. Well, what are you doing right now to reach out to the people of color that you do know? You know, how are you treating Temple members and their family? You know, how are you talking about them when they're not present? I'm going to real quick stop my share. And I want to say to you all that my reputation as a good representative of the race, quotation marks there, is not acceptable. You know, I'm in pain. Like, I have to carry my rage and my sadness around with me every single day of my life. And I hope that my speaking and sharing with you guys has opened your minds and your eyes. In closing, you know, I don't want any pity. I don't want empty words. I want action in the form of personal betterment. And I know that you are all capable of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Talia. I think Geraldo, you're up.
Well, yes, and thank you, Talia, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Myra Soifer and Dr. Jay Gingold for asking me and inviting me to talk today. This has been a great series. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I found Jason Harris, Sean Sawyer, and Nicole Jacobs' discussions quite enlightening, and I hope all of you got out of it just as much as I did. And unlike Talia, who is definitely the in school, the student here, she prepared a video. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about and share with you my Jewish life and talk to you about that and my experience as I was asked to do. And I'll never forget when I called my good friend Toby Rubenstein in New York and told her that I was going to convert to Judaism. And she said to me, "Are you out of your mind? You're Black, you're a woman, and now you want to be a Jew?" She said, "Haven't you been persecuted enough over the years? Why in the world would you want to do that to yourself?" And I was like, whoa, I guess this is one of the first people who's going to challenge me as I decide to convert. I know I have to be asked so many times. But I was definitely, at that time, I was convinced that I felt this strong connection to Judaism after doing some study. And therefore, I began to study with Rabbi David Stern from Temple Emmanuel in Dallas, Texas. And I'm probably a little bit like Talia because I was an overachiever when he gave me those 200 questions to answer. And I quickly got to it, and I was very, very eager and kept asking him when are we going to go get dumped? I'm ready to go to the mikvah. Let's go, and he's like, calm it, take it easy, Gerald. It's going to happen. So here I am learning all about Jewishness and being a Jewish woman. And I learned about the three important aspects of Judaism: God, Torah, community. And I felt as if God and Torah would be easy for me. I had a connection I felt with God, and I felt that, and that was one of the reasons why I chose Judaism. But community, I knew that one was going to be the toughest of the three for me to grasp and to understand. And even before becoming Jewish, through the mikvah, on May 9th, 1995, I experienced not so subtle forms of Ashka normativity, which we learned about last week with Nicole Jacobs. After a Friday night service there in Dallas, Texas, Temple Emmanuel, I was leaving the sanctuary and walking towards the Oneg when a woman asked me, "Whose maid are you?" Yeah, I was shocked. I was devastated. I could not comprehend and understand how this woman even asked me that question. And I looked at her and I just said, I belong here. That Monday morning, I quickly got on the phone with Rabbi Stern and I told him the story. And I told him then that I said, you need me to be a part of your community and your synagogue as just as much as I need you. And he was shocked as well. And he says, you are so right, Geralda. And, apologetically, saying that. But I kept being approached as the stranger at the synagogue. And there was always someone who would jokingly bring up Sammy Davis Jr., as if he's the token African-American Jew in the United States and probably the world for as much as they know. I really at that time began to question, what was it going to take for me to truly become part of a temple community? A year later, I went to Israel with Rabbi Stern, his wife, Nancy Kasten, and a busload of young professionals. And I began to build friendships there, in Israel as we traversed across the country. And many of those friendships I have to this day. I even had a romantic encounter with one of the young men who was on the bus. But as soon as we returned to the US soil, he told me, Geralda, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny, you're intelligent, you're sexy, but this can't go any further because you're Black and I could never take you home to my family. He was the first Jewish man to tell me that, but he wouldn't be the last. I heard that several times when I would go out on coffee dates with Jewish men. They would always tell me, this could never go any further because you're Black. And that really touched me and hit me hard because I always wanted to be part of a Jewish family. I loved visiting my friends at Shabbat when they would pray over their children. I have good friends here in Reno, Ken and Jill Glenn, and I love going over to their house at Shabbat and watch them give each other blessings before the meal. I wanted that. I wanted to be able to share my Jewishness as well as my Black heritage. But I never found that man who would look beyond my Blackness. My Jewishness and my Blackness are a part of who I am, and they are a part of my soul. I truly began, though, to understand and learn about community when I moved to Detroit and began attending Congregation Shir Tikva. Perhaps it's because Rabbi Arnie Slulberg is gay, that community was so welcoming to everyone. And without question, they welcomed and allowed everyone to come in. I was never asked why I was there. I was never asked about why I was a Jew, how I became Jewish, never asked any of that. I was just welcomed for being me and being a Jewish woman. I wish my stay in Michigan would have been longer, but job opportunity brought me to Reno in 2002. And guess what? That's the year Talia was born. Found that out. Moving to the northwest side of town, I began attending Temple Sinai. I enjoyed going to Shabbat services, not for the sense of community, but for a renewed connectedness that I had with God and Torah, and that was thanks to Rabbi Myra Seufer. Luckily, there was an interracial family at Sinai, and they welcomed me warmly. The blanks: Sharon, Jeff, Noah, and Max. They became my community, and they became my family. But when I went to services at Sinai, I felt more than the colored blindness that Nicole Jacobs talked about last week. I felt invisible. It never failed that someone, sometimes more than one, would call me Sharon. Jeff would try to make light of it, and he would joke about it all the time. And he would even call me his second wife. And he would come over to me and just say, "Come sit with me, second wife. Come sit with us, second wife." And that was because the rest of the Temple Sinai community didn't think of me as Geralda Miller or even Geralda Miller. They thought of me as Sharon. The blanks, the family left Reno and Temple Sinai. And it's never felt the same for me. People still, and the blanks have been gone, what, almost 5 years now. People still call me Sharon. I don't have a strong sense of community and a strong sense of connectedness with Temple Sinai. But I do have a strong sense of my faith and my connectedness to my Jewishness and my Blackness. Identity is very, very important. That's what this is all about. It's all about who we are, who I am as a woman, who I am as I walk through the doors of that synagogue. My identity is key. And who am I? I will tell you right now. I am Geralda Miller, not Sharon. I am an African-American woman, daughter of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. I am proud of who I am. Thank you.
Wow, thank you both. So we're going to open it up. Anybody can begin to figure out where to start.
If folks would like to unmute themselves, they can do so now. And again, as Rabbi Myra said, you can either go to the reactions button at the bottom, hit that, and then where it says raise hand, hit that, or just raise your hand and I'll pick you, or Myra will, to ask a question. Jay Goldberg. Jay, did you have a question? Would you unmute? It won't do it. Let me try again. Hold on.
Thank you, Jeff. So first of all, I want to say thank you to both of you. Sharing your experiences, sharing your backgrounds, I'm certainly an Ashkenazi Jew, although I have to say, Talia, there are many times that people have said to me, are you Mexican? Because I'm tall, I'm fairly dark skinned, especially in the summer. So I can appreciate a little bit of that. But Geralda, I have a question for you, and it's actually something that you said on last week's call. I don't remember the exact quote, but you said something like, you didn't feel like it was your responsibility to be teaching people how they're supposed to be acting. And I apologize if I got that a little wrong. I didn't write it down. But I wonder, isn't it everyone's responsibility to try to make the world better and to try to teach people if they're not acting appropriately in some way? It's my responsibility. That's part of the reason I'm here for this session. I certainly haven't intentionally done anything, although unintentionally, I probably have. And so if it's my responsibility, isn't it as much yours and Rabbi Myra's and Talia's and everybody's to try to make the world a better place?
What I said, and yes, what I said, and I truly do believe, and it's like I have gone through years of walking through this world, walking through this life as an African-American woman. And I've gone through now many years as a Jewish woman. When you see me, you don't see Jewishness. You don't see that I am a Jew, but you definitely see that I am African-American. And after a while, when you continue to be treated a certain way, when you continue to be invisible to many people, when you continue to experience racism over and over and over again, when you continue to do these things, and it just seems as if, I say, I'm tired. Just like it's interesting how many people have been going through the struggles and experiencing struggles over the last year. And many people after George Floyd have experienced and begun to experience some, and actually begun to get out and practice themselves, get out and try to express against racial injustices. And what it's interesting that I hear from many of my white friends is, I'm tired. This is too much work. I'm done. And I just say to myself, well, I'll be damned. Here I am, I've been walking around having to deal with this as long as I've been born. And you're tired? You're tired after a year or however long you've been trying to help out with this struggle? You're tired? Well, what I was saying last week to you is that I'm tired. I am definitely have been giving it quite a bit of my all over the years. And I have even, as a woman in history who has studied African history, I have given talks. I have given so much to talk about racial injustice, not only here in Reno, but across the country, and have done so much. And at some point, I even posted a picture, it's interesting, on Facebook this week of marching in the 1980s in Philadelphia against race. So it's something that I've been doing for a very long time. And I can say, I'm tired. And I look around here in the room and I hear the comments and I say, it's like, that's why I say, it's your turn. It's white folks' turn to really stand up against racial inequality. It's now time for all of you to do the work. And I will sit back, I will make comments, I will give, but instead of me initiating, when you hear something that's like inappropriate, speak up on it. It doesn't have to be from me, and it shouldn't have to be from me, because my experience has shown me over the years that you're more likely to listen to your white friends and cohorts than you are to listen to me. I can tell you all day long that that was racist, that was inappropriate. But if someone else in the box here in the room says, hey, that was really inappropriate, you're more likely to listen to them than you are to me. And that's the experience I've had with that.
Jane Grossman next, and then Linda Goldman. Jane, you should unmute. Wait,
Oh, no, there I am.
okay.
I want to first thank Rabbi Myra and Jeff for hosting this. And then very importantly today, I want to thank Talia and Gerald for courageously saying what had to be said and knowing that we could handle it. Like, you just bear it all. And I'm so grateful for your courage and your honesty and knowing that you didn't have to pussyfoot around and you just said what needed to be said. And I so appreciate it. And Talia, I want to apologize to you because I was the speaker of some of those microaggressions that you put on your slide. And I'm very, very sorry for that. I see how that was hurtful as it came out of my mouth. When it came out of my mouth in that first session, I wished I could take it back. And I'm sorry I didn't. And I want to do my work to be a better white anti-racist. And I'm working on it, reading, I'm studying. Jay, when you asked your question, I really was shaking my head because I was like, no, that's absolutely not what we as white people have to ask of our friends of color. We have, as Gerald said, it's our work now, it's our turn. And we have to take the steady time and we have to look at our own privilege and our own assumptions, and it's our work. And we need to give these guys a break, bring them in as friends and our loved community and step up. And so it's not a criticism of you, Jay, but as someone who steps in it all the time, and we're both well-meaning, I know, it's just our turn, as Geralda and Talia said, to do the work, and it's overdue. I'll say for me, I am very late to this game. I've done a lot of environmental work and other kinds of work, but I've not done this very critical racial work. And I'll just say to the whole group, it's my life work coming up.
Thank you.
It has to be done.
Linda Goldman.
I also just want to thank both Geralda and also Talia for the immense courage and the wonderful energy that you brought to telling us your stories. For me, hearing all of this causes me to also reflect on how I present and what I need to do to think about being more active and more assertive in reaching out, understanding and seeing who you are, sharing the fact that I respect you both so immensely, and let you know that I also want us to work individually and as a community, not only being able to be respectful of everybody's identity, but also look at how we can be more inclusive. What does it take for us to be able to move from the comfortableness of the relationships that we may have and move into the relationships that really we want to have, I want to have? And, what kinds of actions will that entail. For me, I also agree, and Geralda, when you talked about community being so important, it is important in Jewish life, I think. And the notion of building that kind of space in our community for everybody is something I want to also put some energy into. And I also want to say, just quite frankly, both of you are such smart, intelligent, brave, courageous, lovely women. I want to get to know you. I think you are brilliant, and I want to get to know who you are. So I wanted to say that to you and let you know that my heart is with you.
Thank you, Linda. Gail Small.
Unmute there, and excuse me, I'm in the car. I'm sorry about that. So I don't know if you can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh God, Talia and Geralda, thank you for not mincing words and being so clear in your speaking. And I have to just share my reaction is the shame I feel of the shame and maybe just you know, I work on other things, but I haven't looked into my own community, my own Jewish community. And I apologize to you personally and make a commitment, as Jane talked about earlier, to be a better community member. So thank you.
I don't see any other hands up or anyone waving other than Myra.
Yeah, I just want to throw out a bunch of things. Jay, I just want to think about your question some more. I think all the questions are good. And even when we step in it, the questions are good. And goodness knows, I frequently step in it. I think it's one thing for folks, whether it's Geralda or Talia, or whether it's you and me when we're in a group that's not all Jews, right? And we have to be the one who speaks up and explains Judaism to everybody. And I think probably most of us who are Jews and don't have the other identities where this has come, we know what that feels like, right? It's like, oh, for God's sakes, open an encyclopedia and look up Hanukkah, you know? You don't need me to tell you about Hanukkah, just Google it. And I think, so a piece of what I wanted to say was, I heard Geralda last week, and I've heard Geralda say that before, and I know that I only dimly have any idea of how exhausted she is, and Talia too, and probably a whole lot of other people too, but you might notice she's here and doing this. So, you know, there is an amazing spirit among our friends to try to help make us better, but it's not their job. You know, it's not the kind of stuff that really just torques me, and it may be small compared to the stuff that exhausts Talia and Geralda. Is, you know, I don't have to go to Geralda to find out what books I can read to get woke. All I have to do is Google, for God's sakes. It's everywhere, you know? It's not her job to find that stuff for me. I mean, it's my work. And that's at least some of what I heard from Geralda. So I just want to throw that out. And again, thank both Geralda and Talia for doing this. I wanted to respond to Jane. It's my suspicion that as hard as much of this may have been for us to hear, that probably Talia and Geralda actually were very kind to us. I bet if they, Jane thanked them for not pussyfooting around. I want to thank them for being as kind as they were, because I bet there's a whole lot more that would be a whole lot more painful for us to hear. I suspect they treated us kindly, and I appreciate that. I also just want to confess, you know, I just hate hearing, you know, that the synagogue that I thought was so welcoming and wonderful was not a place for my friend. I mean, Gerald and I have been up to our ears and other parts of our bodies that were not covered that I won't go into in Playa Dust, and we've shared, we've shared a 24-foot RV on many occasions, and I treasure her as a friend and hope I can count her as a good friend. And it wasn't until I think shortly after the George Floyd murder, or somewhere in that vicinity of all that was going on, that I actually thought, or had the guts, or I'm not sure which it was, to turn to Geralda and say, is there a reason that you really never became a part of the Temple Sinai community? I was the rabbi. I'm Geralda's friend. And I knew she showed up sometimes, and I actually heard her and Sharon and Jeff have that second wife conversation, and I just chuckled it off and never really got it, or never had the courage to really look at it. And I can make all kinds of excuses. I don't ask a lot of people like, okay, so you showed up once, why didn't you join? I mean, I always thought that was rude as a rabbi, but this is my friend, and it took me, I don't know what, Geralda, 20 years to ask you that question. So that's my little bit of confession. I want to say that I'm hopeful. Well, I'm hopeful about some things some days and not at all hopeful other days. But the one that I'm hopeful about at this moment is that I think we've all seen that there was something, I think in the most recent Sinai e-blast about the prospect of reopening the synagogue at the end of June. And I don't know exactly in what configuration that means, but God willing that we get past all this COVID lockdown and the variants don't take us out again. And the world does reopen, including our synagogue. I think this is going to be a phenomenal time for us to look at whether or not we are as inclusive and welcoming as we think we are and as we think we mean to be. Because it's reopening. So what a good opportunity to open anew, or again, after this miserable pandemic that we've all been through, and really struggle with whether or not we're as welcoming as we mean to be. And the last thing is, now I probably really will put my feet into it, because I would like your thoughts, Talia and Geralda, if this seems appropriate to you. I never quite know how to do the dance between, and this came up, Talia, in your presentation, between we're all Jews, and yet I want to recognize that I do see your color. I mean, I don't, or your ethnicity. I don't want to do the, oh, I don't see that you're Black stuff. But on the other hand, you pointed out, Talia, that, I'm a Jew. So cut the adjectives on the front of it. But in fact, we're talking about that the adjectives really matter. And so I never quite, and in fact, Jeff and I had a conversation about how to title this class. Jeff, remember? And Jeff and Jane had a suggestion that we were going to title it something like we're all Jews, or we don't see that you're a Jew of anything, or something like that. And my instant reaction was, no, they are Jews of those somethings. And I don't want to be about denying that. So I just wonder if you have any reflections on that would help with that dance that I don't seem to do very well.
Geralda, do you want to start first, or should I begin?
Go ahead.
Well, I think the first thing is that just like with all sorts of different identities, each person is going to identify differently. Some people prefer to have identity first language. Some people prefer person first language. I don't know if you heard, like on the news, they switched from saying homeless people to people without housing. So not to be like not PC or anything, but really it is up to an individual. When I was asked to come and speak here, Rabbi Myra, you said that someone on the Zoom call that you were a part of had said, oh, Talia identifies as a person of color. Well, my first thought on that was, I don't identify as a person of color. I am a person of color. Like, I didn't pick to identify, like it just happened. I had no control over it. It just happened to me, So I think that the most important thing is to ask people individually what they prefer. Obviously, we saw one of the examples of microaggressions last week was asking someone, to speak on behalf of everyone. So I can't really say on behalf of all Mexi Jews, this is what we ask. But I would think that, like I said, culture clash does not have to be a war. It can be a blend. You know, obviously, as a Mexican-American Jew, in no particular order, because all three of those things are equally important to me, it's okay and it's absolutely wonderful for me to have a beans and rice bat mitzvah. And I want to share that with my community. I want you to be a part of that because it's important to me. So it's just important to recognize, I think, that after individually consulting with people in our community, whether it's online or in person, that you are open-minded. Because even within Judaism, it's pluralistic. So we can have Mizrahi and Sephardic foods at our Ashkenazi Seder. That's fantastic. It makes things better. I mean, I don't know about you guys personally. Kugel is gross. I don't want to eat that. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. And you just have to look beyond, you know, your own kitchen for it or your own synagogue.
Thanks.
Geralda, did you have some comments to follow?
Yeah, well said, Talia. And I do think that, you know, it does probably work individually. I think that it's easier for those who might be white passing or, you know, can easier pass as white versus some of us who don't. You know, when the first thing you're going to see with me, you're going to see Blackness. And so therefore there are questions that come with that may not come with others. So, I mean, I say, you know, face the elephant in the room. You know, it's like, don't ignore the elephant in the room and acknowledge it. I think is probably, Myra, the best way to go with that is than not.
Thanks.
Good. Carol Pepney has a comment or question, and then Jill Flansreich. Carol?
Yes, I just unmuted. I want to make an apology specifically to Talia, who called me on it, and I appreciate that you did. At least I took it as directed to the comment that I made about, I thought Sinai was rather welcoming and that in many ways we were doing a pretty good job. And I do remember saying, this is most probably going to sound offensive, and it most probably was, but I did believe that we were doing a pretty good job. Obviously, we're not doing as good a job as I thought we were. And so I'm going to apologize to you. I don't think I've ever had a direct event with either you or Geraldo. I only know you from Deborah's Seders. But I made an assumption that we were doing better than I thought we were. I'm hanging on part of what Rabbi Myra said. And I just wanted to make my apologies. And I too need some figuring out of what it is I need to do better.
Good. Thank you. Jill Flansreich.
I think I'm unmuted, right? Yes.
Unmuted.
Okay. A dynamic that might be explored at future workshops like this is what our heritage and ancestral history as either Ashkenazi, Sephardic, or whatever your Jewish background is, that got us to this point in our Jewish community, and what the impact was along the way of our grandparents, our own parents, how they reacted to diverse cultures, and how that impacts us today. Because I think it transcends, there are many reasons besides just appearance, that there are behaviors that we all want to work on, and it would be interesting to understand our roots and how that's impacted it. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is when the building does reopen, God willing, soon, I encourage you to go in this small social hall and see the faces of all of the women who were portrayed there. And hopefully that'll help a little bit of healing as far as inclusiveness.
Very nice. Ina made a wonderful comment. She would like to suggest that some kind of program like this be presented to our Hebrew school children. I made that suggestion a month ago to some of the administration at Sinai to invite the older kids to this series of programs, but that wasn't able to happen at this point. So I think going forward, whether we're inviting students or inviting speakers or providing other opportunities, I think we'll do the best to have something on the level of the students at the same time.
So Talia will have to write the curriculum for it.
Linda Goldman, would you like to share what you were thinking about?
Yes, what I was thinking is that, you know, the underlying theme here is that we don't seek out and explore our individual identities, partially because there is this tendency, not only in our community, but perhaps worldwide, to focus on othering. The notion that others are not like us. And that cuts many different ways. Certainly race is a part of it. Certainly, you know, other aspects, age is a part of it sometimes. Socioeconomic orientation is a part of it sometimes. I've even heard at Sinai, many times people introduce themselves by how long they've been members, as if you've been a member for 20 years, you're more of the community than you would be if you are a member for 2 years. So, you know, I somehow sense that. And of course, if you've been a member for 20 years, you've been invested for a long time. But new members are important too, and have a place too. And so I think on many, many different levels, in so many different ways that I know I'm not even aware of, we separate ourselves from each other as opposed to pulling ourselves together. So I would love for us to be able to really look at that so that we can expand our understanding of how we are presenting and what impact that has on all of us.
Dr. Jeff, you've muted yourself.
Myra, were you about to make a comment?
Maybe. Because I'm waiting for an answer in the chat, whether I can share something or not. Yeah, I guess, so the first thing I should say is this feels a little like Yom Kippur to me. So everybody take a breath, except you can go eat. I don't know what else I have to say other than I expected someone to say, what are we going to do now? Which no one has said, so I'll say it. And I, you know, I think I really appreciate that all of you are here today and have shown up in the preceding sessions and so forth, and are willing to do this, and I think really care about this work. But I think the next issue is what are we going to do now? So I hope that we can be in contact with one another about what we might now do next, because clearly this is just, you know, the barest of tiniest beginnings, and I'm sure we all have some thoughts, and I'm sure this is not the time to do that, but I would like to see us do that at some point. So, but
Myra, you finished for a sec?
Yeah.
Are we finished with that? Okay, with that. We've had people who are not people of color, men, women, and others who've said when they walked into Sinai, they got a great warm welcome, and others have said, no, I didn't at all. And I wasn't going to come back until someone encouraged me, and then someone gave me a great warmth or a welcome that made me really want to be here. So I think it's not just people of color, and it's not just people who are challenged physically or any other way. I think we just Our goal with this, I think, was to make our whole community more welcoming to everyone, but to learn more, particularly about Jews of color. So going forward, I think Myra had suggested, and others had, that we have a committee, either freestanding or as part of the membership committee, and we'll talk about that going forward, that will focus on inclusivity and eliminating bias and educating our young people. I love that idea from Ina, that we focus a lot of attention on young people so that they're raised in an environment that really includes this inclusivity. That'll be so critical and so crucial. So our plan, at least at this point, is to consider having either an independent or a committee as part of membership going forward to see what we can do. There's a lot to learn. And right now, this is so hot, and particularly in the reform movement now, that every community has a Jews and race program or speaker or invited programs, because people want to share and want to become more open and more inclusive. So it's a good time for us to find other speakers, literature, programs that we can share. We have a few videos that we'd like particularly for people to be aware of and to be able to share. Other comments folks have, questions?
Real quick, Dr. Jeff, the Union for Reform Judaism, I'll put in the chat, they're actually having a couple of town halls on this issue. So if you want to see what's going on in a wider scale, just beyond our small temple Sinai, the whole movement is going to be meeting. There are 2 town halls, 2 days. You can pick and choose which one you're going to go to. I think I'm going to the second one. So hope to see you all there.
I may go to the first one, but if you want to check that out, you can actually go to the Religious Action Center website, or probably it's on the URJ too, but the RAC, RAC. And it's a whole, they are launching a whole, I don't know, what are they calling it, Talia? Do you remember? A diversity launch movement, whatever it is.
And Reform Judaism actually has a center for audacious hospitality, which focuses on this. So if anyone in the audience is interested, you can look that up as well. That's the code word.
And those speakers are willing to speak to us or provide speakers or literature to communities throughout the country, or if not throughout the world, to focus on and improve this.
We can work on, I think, a lot more programming. All right. So thank you all.
What did we miss?
Jane's got her hand up. Okay. Jane Grossman.
I went to a leadership training with Rabbi Sarah a couple weeks ago with the URJ. And from that, she and I are going to do a presentation for the board. And a lot of it is around questions of how do we make Sinai more people-centered, more inclusive. And so if anybody would like to get involved and help with that, we'd love your help. So that's going to start happening. I think we're making a presentation to the board about the 2-day workshop we went to. And then the thinking is that we'll do some exercises with the board and the committee chairs at Temple Sinai. And then our hope, and this is very rough draft thinking, is to have each board member or committee chair reach out to 4 or 5 Temple Sinai members and to really do a nice conversation for 20 to 30 minutes of a check-in on how are you doing, how are you faring in this pandemic, and then, what do you need as a person, and what do you need from your spiritual community, and what do we need to become as Temple Sinai? So we are about to start something like that, but we could definitely use more helpers. So either contact Rabbi Sarah or Rabbi Myra or Jeff or me, and that should be starting in April and May. But I'd like to propose maybe, because this group has been amazing and we've showed up for these last 3 weeks, to maybe continue next week and just see what ideas we might have. Because it'll be really easy to go back to sleep and go, oh yeah, well, that was that. And I think we have the momentum right now, and I'd like to suggest that we do something sooner than later and just think about it this week, and no idea is a bad idea. They're all good, and that's how we get something new started. So I don't know if you guys can host next week, but if you can't, I can.
So
people-
next week is problematic because Passover is Saturday night, the first Seder, and the second one would be Sunday night. So
Right.
I think that would be a problem, Jewishly a problem. But I am all for not waiting too long. And I want to say that some of my thoughts in terms of how we go forward are not only about how we go forward within Temple Sinai on these issues, but also outside of Temple Sinai, which actually, as you well know, Jane, the Social Action Committee is trying to think a little bit about too. So
Our social action meeting is this week, and I'd like
Right.
to dedicate some of that. So if some of you, even if
We
you
will.
haven't come before, if you'd like to come, we'll be talking a lot about legislation. But I'd love to just use some of that time to talk about this as well, because that could be another place where some of this work lands.
okay, I think I see Gail Small's hands, and then either Laura or Chris. Go, Gail.
Thank you. I don't have the capacity and I'm very good at volunteering other people, but for Passover, it would be great to put in some kind of, I mean, what a perfect time to talk about inclusion and just, what we're talking about racism in our Passover services. I wonder if there is just something that the reform movement has put out along these lines that we could include in the Temple Bulletin or something like that for our home services or something along those lines.
I think there's a lot of stuff. So you're talking about for individuals to have for their home services, huh?
Yeah, or perhaps, and what the rabbis are doing is, inviting us to watch them. So either or, but it might be a nice time to bring the whole community more in line with this discussion so that we can have a more robust discussion in the future.
Right. I will try to look for a few of those resources maybe and see if I can get them to Mike to get some things out this week. One of the issues with that is that obviously I don't want to step on our resident rabbis who are on vacation right now and will be on vacation till the day of Passover. So the dynamics of putting that together may be a little, I don't know, but
Completely understood.
It's a
Thank
good
you.
suggestion, Gail, and I will see what I can do about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I think Laura and Chris.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think a silver lining of this horrible pandemic thing we've been through is that we've all kind of gotten more adept at using Zoom. And I think this Zoom format was excellent for this kind of a meeting because there were so many of us that could get together from a lot of different places. As a lot of we live 50 miles away. And see each other's faces and be able to talk and think and raise a lot of questions and issues. And I am really appreciative of this. So even though if the temple, well, no, not if, I say when the temple opens up again, I still like the idea of having some sort of Zoom connection. I think there's value to it. It would be more inclusive, if you will. So thank you for doing these sessions. It's been really a good thing.
Yes, and thank you both for sharing your thoughts. I think it's really important.
Yep.
One thing that occurred to me, I think that when we get together, especially those of us who hardly ever come, you just find the people that you know and you talk to them. So I think it's an issue to make new people feel included. That's something to address because it's not like you're excluding others, but you sort of, it's a finite amount of time and you just go for the people that you already know, and then it just keeps perpetuating. It makes new people feel unwelcome.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of, not everybody's a raging extrovert. So sometimes it's a matter of stepping out of your comfort zone, and because your comfort zone isn't always that blasted comfortable if you stay stuck there. So
One thing that I hear from that conference a few weeks ago, and I think a commitment from Rabbi Sarah, is that there will be an online option for people. And I think most synagogues and churches across the country are moving in that direction, that this has made it more inclusive. And I believe that that will be included. And so the trick is how to make the online people feel part of it as much as the people who are there in person. And it's very possible. So it's not hard. It's just making the time to do it.
Yeah, I can tell you from a board perspective that we absolutely are going to continue streaming services, streaming High Holy Days, even if we're open for everybody to attend. There is no reason in this day and age not to. And as far as I know, Torah study is going to continue as an online option. I don't know if that will ever be in person or not, but even if it is, there will still be an online option for people who live too far, who can't come in, who for whatever reason just are feeling a little under the weather and still want to participate. So no, board is fully engaged in that, and it will continue, I can tell you for sure.
Or who want to study Torah in their jammies, which is usually the state I'm in on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Okay, is anybody more? All right, so I want to again most sincerely thank Talia and Geralda and all of you who have attended and who are taking this to heart. And we're all going to be partners in keeping this going, whatever that may mean, but we will figure that out and try to do it. Okay, and everybody, hopefully I'll see you on Shabbat because I'm leading services Friday night. In any case, I hope everybody has a really joyous Passover. I know none of us thought we'd be doing it this way a second time, but here we are, and I hope it is a Passover that feels liberating and joyous and hopeful, and it's spring and rebirth is coming. I just have to believe that. So thank you all. Toodles.